Hi, I'm Dave, founder of Halloween Year Round, and I love a good camp slasher. It is a subgenre that just screams summer to me. No summer is complete to me without watching at least a few of these. It, of course, includes the entire franchise of the shirt that I'm wearing, but it's also a fascinating subgenre within a subgenre already, your slasher. But for me, a good camp slasher is one that has to be set in some sort of camp. So when I heard that Finn Wolfhard, that's right, Mike from Stranger Things, was co-writing and co-directing in his feature debut along with Billy Bryk, I hope I'm saying that right. I was intrigued that they were making, well, a camp slasher movie, Hell of a Summer. The trailers looked really fun. I knew this was a movie that, behind the scenes, Wolfhard had said it was very difficult to sell it. It was a script he wrote when he was 19. It was shot and debuted all the way back in 2023, but is only now getting wide release. Now that it's out, what are my thoughts on it? Let's get into it.
So much blood.
Shut.
Oh, God, this is bad.
That's so much worse than I thought it was gonna be. The line's been cut. Oh, I've always wanted to say that.
We're gonna die. We're all gonna die.
So, Hell of a Summer does something kind of profound that I didn't even know I was looking for. Well, I was sort of looking for in a slasher movie. Take a look at that subgenre now. Name a slasher movie other than Terrifier in the modern era. We're talking like last 10, 15, even 20 years. Yeah, it's 2025. I know, time flies. Name one that doesn't feel the need to resort to something meta. You have your Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, In a Violent Nature from last year, where it's like, oh, it's a slasher, but it's from the point of view of this. I'm not saying that's bad. I just think that ever since Scream came out and kind of revitalized the genre, all the 2000s plus slashers since then have all felt the need that they have to be meta, they have to be self aware, and they have to either have the characters deconstruct the genre or the movie itself is a deconstruction of the genre. Even some of my favorite recent entries in that, the aforementioned In a Violent Nature, but I'm a huge fan of 2015's The Final Girls, which features a group of teenagers literally getting sucked into a vintage slasher movie where they have to survive knowing all the tropes and whatnot. Hell of a Summer does something kind of profound. In a way, it's self-aware because the characters, it's a very funny movie. Every single character gets a moment to shine, and they're quippy, but they don't feel the need to reference a million other horror movies. Nor does the movie really try to deconstruct the subgenre itself, which leaves you with what I call a myriad of paradoxes. Now, if that sounds like a pretentious dissertation, well, it kind of is. That's what this video basically is. I'm pretentious, but I don't try to hide it. You're wrong. I'm right. But it all feeds together in a movie I find fascinating for a lot of different reasons. So here is your warning. I'm going to get into spoilers a little bit. I did sort of like a brief review of the movie. I'll put a link to that in the description. That's spoiler free if you want to check that out. But you are so forewarned. If you don't want me to spoil it, go watch the movie and come back. You better come back. Let's talk about spoilers. So this is a movie that I'm not entirely sure when it is set because you have your main character. We know that he's been going to this camp for years. We know that he's 24 years old, but we also know from a picture on the wall that he was there in 1998, but also there's like smartphones, which confused me a little bit. But it's sort of the perfect metaphor of how Hell of a Summer is somehow simultaneously the quintessential boomer slasher and the quintessential Gen Z slasher. Now, what do I mean by that? It's a boomer slasher in the sense that, well, it follows all the tropes and feels like the perfect representation of everything that was the late 70s, early 80s slasher boom. You have the group of camp counselors at this camp. You have the masked killer picking them off one by one. You have the characters not really trusting each other. You have the movie kind of starting off as like the, teen comedy where they're all some are horny, some are annoying, some are funny, some are weird, and you just kind of spend time with the characters, getting to know them in the beginning before the horror even starts. But with an amazing opening kill sequence, it follows all the tropes to a T. And aside from the modern technologies, feels like it could have been made in the early 80s during that boom. But at the same time, it's written and directed by two actors that are very much Gen Z. It also features killers whose motivation, again, spoilers, is to be famous, is to be well known and to be influencers. And we even see the one talking on her phone to her audience. So you have this weird blend of like, what if we took Gen Z characters and sort of the way that they communicate and the way they talk to each other and put them in this classic slasher that is both self-aware but also not really meta, but also is the perfect representation of a early 80s camp slasher, but is also a refreshing movie that's a slasher that doesn't feel the need to reference a million other horror movies, but is also not really doing anything new or unique with the genre, but is also very entertaining. You see why this movie nearly broke my brain, and I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that as it was incredibly entertaining, it was incredibly funny. The kills, some of them were kind of grotesque and fun. I kind of wish it had done more with that. It does a lot off screen, but again, I don't really fault. You have two very young writer directors making their debut. Part of that might have been just not having the experience or confidence to shoot those scenes in full detail. So I kind of excuse it for that. But this is a movie that feels like it is everything and nothing at the same time. But I still really, really enjoyed it. It's refreshing to get just a plain, straight up slasher movie that isn't trying to reinvent the wheel. But the critic in me is like, oh, what did it do differently? So it challenged sort of my own prejudices towards, quote unquote, conventional movies that aren't trying to, well, reinvent the wheel. We all know that critics ate up In a Violent Nature. Critics sung the praises of Skinamarink for being so narratively different and for being so unconventional in their approach. But sometimes we forget that sometimes a slasher movie should just be a fun slasher movie, that it doesn't need to do anything that different. And for everyone in the comments who's saying, oh, but Terrifier does that, it does, but it takes the gore and dials it up to 11. So that's the way that it is sort of challenging those lines and pushing those envelopes and deconstructing the genre. Not in that it's meta or self-aware, but that it goes so far and like dares you, the audience, to keep watching it. So in the end, I'm left with a movie that I really do enjoy. It's a great ensemble cast, and like I said, every single character and actor gets their moment to shine, and I was having fun the entire time. I saw it, and I was genuinely afraid I was going to fall asleep when I saw it. Not because it was boring, but because I saw Screamboat, and then I saw this after that, and when you get to be my age, and you get to have two young children, you tend to get tired earlier than you used to. So I went to see this at a showtime at like 9:30. So the movie with previews didn't even start till 10, and I was genuinely concerned I was going to have trouble staying awake. But I was wide awake the entire time, not because I wasn't exhausted. I was physically, but I was so engaged and interested in everything that was happening in the movie that I never got tired. I was enjoying every second. I was laughing at every joke. I was loving every minute of it, which again only further feeds, I don't know, where do I put this movie? It does everything I love over here. It doesn't, it's not trying to be meta or self-aware. It's just being a straightforward slasher, but it's not breaking new ground. So it's why I think this movie is the ultimate paradox. It's a movie that on paper I wouldn't like, but kind of swept me away with the experience of it. And I'm so glad I saw it. And I think most general audiences who are just looking for that fun, straightforward slasher that maybe are getting a little tired of everything trying to reinvent itself will probably really enjoy it. But hey, these are just my thoughts. This is just my rant. This is just my review. This is just my channel. Get your own. Like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. If you don't, you may end up stuck in a summer camp with two killers wearing genuinely really cool vintage devil masks that are like my favorite killer mask, maybe since Scream. And as always, every day is Halloween.